Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Nada, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to
Imad,
be here.
Nawartana, it's a pleasure to have you here.
نور
Sultan. We have Nada, CEO of Nada Debs Studio. We have Imad Yassin, founder of Idris Foundation.
هلا مرحبا.
And Sultan Al Darmaki, co-founder of 1833. Thank you for being with us. It's a pleasure having you both, all of you here. I think that what resonated with all of you, with me, is the power of community and how much impact that has, and how all of you have worked so tirelessly to ensure that you create this concept of unity and of bringing people together. So starting with Nada, first of all, I just wanted to kind of tell you that I've become an enormous fan of your work.
Thank you.
It resonated on so many levels because I myself am someone who has been very much inspired by Japanese culture. My first fashion show was inspired by the samurai. And when I went to Japan, I came back a changed person, I can tell you. So the aesthetic of merging that East and East is an incredible movement that I think really took over the Middle East. And kind of a love letter to what we want, to Arabia as well. Tell us how you managed to create this synergy with communities, because I have seen how, for example, when you went to Palestine and you saw the embroiderers who made embroidery based on fabric and then changed that into furniture. How do you get to create this kind of number one? How do you identify the community, and how do you get to create a mentorship program for them? So please go ahead.
I mean, it all starts with really. It's a personal journey. For me, it was first about really finding an identity. So we all have some form of identity, whether it's Japanese or Arab, or Palestinian, or Afghani, or Pakistani, And so for me, it's about finding a way to connect between the two cultures, first of all. So, like when it came to the Palestinian women in the camps that I visited in Beirut, first of all, I brought the whole community. It was about 12 women who came over to my studio, and I wanted them to understand how what we were doing was taking Middle Eastern craft and taking it to another level, simplifying the lines, etc., of our work. And once they understood that concept, they were able to apply it on their embroidery. And what I would then do is sit with them and ask them to experiment, and we would sit together, all of us, and talk about stories, especially because the project we were working on was embroidering their land, the landscape. So that was really a way of bringing the whole community together.
It's amazing how much it resonated on so many levels. Speaking of resonance, and speaking of community as well, Imad, Idris Foundation is really incredible how full circle it has come. How do you manage to allocate the communities? I remember there's one story that resonated to me. Yes, I've been doing some research, but basically it's this one blind person who told you, I don't want any money. I want someone to build a toilet, because the poor guy, he was blind, and he had to have his wife take him, and every time he felt like his he wasn't comfortable, and it was almost like his dignity was being kind of compromised. And then the next day, it's funny because you don't know, how much it costs. And something very minimal can do so much. Mm-hmm. And literally the next day, you forward him over to an eye doctor, and then and then he could see, and obviously he got his wish. So being able to achieve that, being able to build that kind of community, how does it feel to be able to create this kind of impact?
Yeah, I think it was my first ever trip to the refugee camps. And you have to imagine that after discovering that my father had left this legacy of an orphanage that he never told anybody about, I actually went there very skeptical, thinking that it doesn't even exist, maybe, and I went. And the shock for me was how small acts and having a fresh pair of eye at looking at the problem. I mean, you have to imagine these refugee camps are typically in a very remote place. These people are in such despair that this man who lost any hope of doing anything other than preserving what was left of his dignity, and then somebody who comes from outside and say, hey, maybe, just maybe, there is something to be saved in his eyesight, right? And for me, it was a pivotal moment, because I have to be honest, when you see it, and you see this is an issue that, as not just on a governmental level, but as individuals, that we're going to see more and more of this, because this forceful migration caused by wars, but also caused by environmental change, is going to keep happening. And we have to step up to be able to provide some form of support for all these people that potentially we can be one of them,
Yeah.
you know? Nobody knows with what's happening in the world. So I think in that moment, I realized the importance of having a fresh pair of eyes that looks at the problem. And in addition to that, in that same trip, I remember going and visiting these really underprivileged families. Like, these are below poverty. And I remember walking into one of the camp's huts, if you want to call it even a home, it's a hut. And we wanted to support this family. And the person there said, hey, I'm okay, but my neighbor in the other side is worse than me. You should go help him. And that was also a big wake-up call for me to think, when you think about community.
How genuine.
Yeah, and also, like, the communities are created sometimes by a shared purpose and sometimes a shared experience. And in the middle of pain, sadly, we are living now in more privileged time, and we have these beautiful homes, and you probably don't know what's happening in your next door neighbor house. But these people are so connected that they are willing to put the other person ahead, that they're more in need. And it was a great lesson for me to experience that.
It's amazing. We'll go back to how Idris Foundation started as well, and Walid Allah yarhamu. You're continuing that legacy. So, incredible stories. Sultan, so it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
This is the second time you're with us on Gems of Arabia.
That's right.
And there's a lot that happened since our last conversation. A lot. Yeah, mashallah. And obviously the iconic shoes that are the VMA will remain there. But what this is incredible when it comes to the evolution of Sultan. So tell us more about 1833 and what is 1833?
First and foremost, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much
Pleasure
for having me again. I think a lot have happened in the past couple of years. It did not necessarily stray away from my core, which is being part of the creative industry. I think in my 20 years of experience, I've worked, I had Darmaki to start with, which is a footwear brand, and then I moved into Halpern, and my work within the creative was always there. 1833 was born when I came back for a visit here, and I've witnessed an incredible uprising of the creative industry here, and it became quite visible, and one cannot avoid it nor ignore it. And it made me realize very quickly that whilst there's this beautiful renaissance happening, it still was operating in a space that I didn't feel comfortable in, which was very sort of cliquey and almost like different creatives worked in different silos. And I come from a world of connectivity and knowing each other and being able to support each other, from more established designers to young voices. And that was how 1833 was born. It was a conversation on a sofa with a friend of mine, and very quickly we are at where we're at right now. I think 1833 is 8 months old, but within 8 months we managed to create some sort of a really beautiful movement within the industry itself. I think there's a lot of question marks about 1833, a lot of people asking a lot of questions. it was intention. It's by intention that we don't talk much about it, in the sense that we don't promote it, we don't do marketing, we don't spend dollar. We always say 1833 is a space where you'll get to truly understand it when you're there and you experience one of our events or our programming, until our physical space is there. Nada was at our first event just a couple of weeks ago,
it
and I
was
think
so nice.
it's very difficult to kind of put it into words, but
It did have a sense of community, like you felt like you're part of something.
Absolutely.
A sense of belonging.
a sense of belonging
and
to
that's
it.
like
Yeah.
the most important
It
thing.
was
I
very,
think,
very
in,
important. And I think
in
to
us
Idris,
human beings.
yeah, to Idris' point, I think it's, I remember my childhood growing up here. And I grew up in Al Ain specifically, where, the doors are open to everyone. When you drive through Al Ain, and still until today, when you drive through Al Ain, every house, their door is wide open. And that is an invitation for even strangers to come in. They want to come in for coffee, for dinner, for lunch. It is quite wide open. And I think I sort of also felt nostalgic to that sort of period of time where I knew my neighbors. We were there as a community. When there is a wedding, this entire community came together to support a wedding. So if you take these values and sort of implement it within the space of a creative community where we're there to support each other, but it needs to be done from a very authentic and human-centric approach, then, it works. And I think that's where we're at with 1833, and I think that's why it worked so far. I hope it continues, inshallah.
It will. It seems really sky's the limit, and I have been busy and not able to attend many, unfortunately. But I did attend a communal dinner by Chef Khalid, was it?
Yeah, it was a Chef Khalid.
And it was amazing how you really get to shed light also on the culinary side of local culinary and really incredible chefs. Not very good for my waistline, but but it was incredible, and just seeing how everyone came together. And I've come, on a stage where I feel I've had major FOMO. So every time I get an email from, I'm like FOMO, But it's amazing this hype that's happening. And at the end of the day, you mentioned it. I think there's too many clicks. And it's nice to be able to bring people together who share the same passion, the same need to feel like they belong to a culture or to a group or to a creative outlook, and this is what you're creating through the 1833.
Yeah, I think there's two folds to the what you mentioned right now. I think in not necessarily just in the Middle East there's cliques. In every city that you live in, there is a clique.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. It happens. It's part of human nature. And I think when you create spaces like this, you allow people to basically break away from what they're familiar with and stepping into something of a much bigger value. From when we talk about the creative industry as a whole, I think in the Middle East specifically, we look at creative from few different sort of aspects only, which is either a product design, fashion design, or art. And then the truth is, the creative disciplines are so many, including food, and that's why we celebrate like the likes of Chef Khalid, Chef Sahar. There's an area of it, and if we can start highlighting that we have different disciplines within the Middle East, then why not?
Munna, speaking of your transition from Japan into the UK, you spent some time in the UK, and you mentioned that you felt like there was a community there that was Arab, but maybe not necessarily speak the language, but that was Arab, and you felt like a sense of belonging. Yeah. What made you shift from the UK to Lebanon afterwards?
I mean, it was all subconscious. So originally I grew up in Japan, then I went to the US to study, and I really was seeking this sense of community, sense of belonging. I didn't know what it was like. I mean, I grew up as an isolated Arab and Muslim family in Kobe, Japan, not even Tokyo, so it's a smaller city. It's a port city where there was a very international community, but nobody like us. And so I felt like my journey to the Arab world was really a journey to get back to my roots and to find out who I am. But when I did arrive to Lebanon at the end, I found out that I wasn't really 100% Lebanese. So I had to create my own identity, which was a mix of the Japanese upbringing I had and the Middle Eastern also upbringing I had. And so this was that new perspective, that new eye that you were talking about. So I was able to bring this new eye, but to craft, because craft for me is where you really find the source of identity of a culture. And so for me, when I went to see the craftsmanship of our part of the world, I just introduced a new eye, a new perspective of working in that field, and it created its own new language. And hence, after that, I realized that there was a whole community of Arabs who studied abroad, who wanted to come back to our part of the world, and who had that same dilemma that I did. And so there's this subculture that was created, and they're all the like-minded people you're
Yeah.
talking about, that really bring the two, mix of cultures, and it creates an identity, a new identity.
It's amazing, and the work resonates on so many levels. I mean, incredible what you have created over the years.
Thank you.
And the level of intricacy, and how you introduce the Arabic language and merge it with East with the Japanese. And I particularly love the term bling bling, which is the
Oh, the
our
bling
bling.
bling, yeah. So I
Which
did a
basi-
whole series of furniture called the Middle East bling bling, because when I looked at bling bling in the States, it was Swarovski tiles,
Yeah.
right? And they just overdo. And I'm like, what about us, So I'm like, okay, people think of the Middle East with mother of pearl. So I started to take our classic tables and just, fill them with mother of pearl. And I called that the Middle East bling bling collection. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely spectacular, and it's also a favorite. The Hazem Masjid has a great boutique in on Galleria Mall,
Yeah.
and for us,
Cities.
it's
Yeah.
the go-to
Yeah.
for gifting. You can't go wrong with the
Yeah.
another
True.
Debs gift.
Thank you.
But it's amazing because, like, to be quite honest with you, like, your work is fantastic. Like,
Thank
we
you.
all know,
Thanks.
like, it's quite incredible. But I think you also, like, was one of the first people that sort of was part of the movement that happened in the region when it came to product design. So, like,
Yeah.
it was quite incredible that this entire wave that you created. It was mind blowing.
When I moved to Lebanon, so I looked for a design industry, and there actually wasn't any. They weren't even teaching it in the universities. There was no such thing as product design or furniture design. There were interior designers, but they bought things from abroad or created in factories. They take a picture from a magazine and have a piece of furniture made. So the idea of actually a furniture
Innovation.
designer,
Yeah.
or just a furniture designer in the Middle East did not really exist when I first.
No, it didn't. Because I remember when I saw your first. I came across you in a somewhere in the press. Like, we talked many years, many
possibly,
years.
because I did some shows in London,
Yeah,
like early on in 2003, something like that.
and I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is amazing. I was like, this is going to change an entire industry.
I didn't even think that it would. It happened to be, I don't know if you've heard of Sawaya and Moroni. It's a duo designers. Sawaya is Lebanese and Moroni is Italian, and they're a couple that actually made furniture, and they decided they wanted to promote Lebanese design. Came to Beirut, and I was showing a contemporary piece I was making, but he was looking at my modern Middle Eastern, the mother of pearl work,
Yeah.
and he's like, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's just nothing. I was just experimenting." He goes, "That's what I want to see."
That's
And this
amazing.
is how I geared
amazing.
towards that.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Ahmad, what are the building blocks of starting such a foundation, and how do you manage to kind of run it and make sure that you capture the right community, and where do you decide where to go, and how does it start? If someone wants to get into this.
Yeah, I like what you said around the decision was made in the subconscious, because I went to this incredible event this weekend about longevity that Tezi has organized. And one of the professors there said that 80% of the decisions we make are from the subconscious. So clearly, when I first came back from that visit, I was completely overwhelmed. And seeing something around 400,000 people stranded in these refugee camps for 40, 50 years, it's a lot to process. And believe me, I tried maybe for 4 months or so to just say, we'll just keep the orphanage running of my father, and I don't want anything to do with this. But there is an old wisdom that says you can't unsee what you've seen. And I just kept getting visions of everything that I saw. And then the story of that blind man, because it's happened after I came back, to think that, oh, you know, I don't have to think this big. And I remember when I sat down with my siblings and I thought, listen, what can we do? So we realized that within our small, at that stage, group of the family, our main expertise was in health, me being a geneticist, and education from my kind of sister's side. And we said, why don't we focus on just two topics, health and education? And we were very keen on at least looking after the future generation. So we said children. That was the first idea. Let's keep it simple. And when people told me, are you crazy? You know, can you maintain this? And I remember, thanks to you, GQ Arabia asked me to write that essay around technology. Is it good or is it bad? And in that essay, I debated the fact that I said that Idris Foundation wouldn't exist in the way that it can and operate if it wasn't for technology. Because of the fact that we have been able, there is about 28 of us, and not a single person gets paid a salary. Nobody has it as a full-time job, but yet everybody brings their expertise. And through that network, the amount of work that we've been able to achieve has been phenomenal. And had we not had these kind of technologies and capabilities, I don't think we'll be able to do so. When you're thinking about building blocks, I think clearly in my subconscious, I was craving something like this. And I think a lot of us, I think humans are social creatures, and deep inside, we need a sense of purpose. And I think we all in this table, we share the same thing, is that there is something in us that called us to say, what can I do more than just earning a living and being in that wheel, right? And as soon as you discover it, it becomes a passion. So I feel like in Idris Foundation, that's what happened with me. Suddenly I was like, it's not just me, everyone around me. And I remember, for example, when we started this series in COVID, I called you, I called Neda immediately. You guys jumped and said, yes, let's do this to inspire people. And it was about kindness and showing that it is possible for us. And particularly at a time right now that we are thinking, I feel like sometimes in some areas, and I think in the Middle East, I feel very fortunate sometimes to feel like we are going and becoming this beacon of freedom, and people are beginning to open up. And then in other places in the West, we're seeing things closing down. And what an incredible moment to be there. So having a shared vision or purpose, being in some way inclusive, as we hear a lot of attack on inclusivity, I believe diversity and inclusion are important because people want to see themselves represented in some shape or form. Having good communication I found really important, and not getting caught up. Like, for example, when I first, coming from a technology side of things, when I started Edge Foundation, one of my dreams was, and I'm part of Singularity University, so I called these incredible founders, and we've prepared all these drones so we can deliver medicine across the refugee camps. And then they're like, what are you talking about? These kids don't have food to eat. Like, so not to get disheartened, and starting from there. So we started to build from the beginning, collaborating, also not trying to reinvent the wheel. For me, this has been a really important, instead of building everything in-house, Idris Foundation, if we did not collaborate with the right charities that had the people on the ground, we have a commitment that every dollar or dirham or whatever amount people are donating, that at least 80% of it goes to the cause. So this means that so I used a little bit, probably my experience in startups is to be agile and to use the existing platforms that are available rather than saying, no, we need to start everything and rebuilding it. So, and governance, because once you collaborate with other people, you need to have really measurable ways to maintain the quality that you expect from a community to deliver something. And probably the last one that I would add is agility, because like at the War of Sudan, for example, has forced us to try to look in other places to deliver the work that we do, because things became very difficult.
MashaAllah, how long the hand has it been since you started?
This is the year 12.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, 12 years.
Incredible. Sultan, I know that 1833 is also heading towards other directions. So we're talking about special houses in each part of the region. Tell us more about this further development that.
بإذن الله. I think looking at it from a venture perspective, it just makes sense for us that like we do build our physical spaces, and obviously Dubai needs to be the first space because that's where we're at right now. The goal is within the next 10 years to have it across the MENA region, from Casablanca to Tunis to Cairo, Saudi, back to Kuwait and Bahrain. We do want it to be very much MENA region focused. And the reason we want it to be MENA focused is when you look at the bigger picture, if you start connecting people within Dubai, how amazing would it be when there's that connectivity across the entire MENA region and we all get to know each other?
It's incredible.
So inshallah.
Yeah, really. It's the answer to a lot of things that us as GCC creatives have been craving. I mean, for me, I started, 18, 20 years ago when I had my own retail, my own fashion. Started when I was 5, I'm joking. but I mean, all the things that we are craving, it's amazing to see them happening now. It's like a whole new spring of philosophies, way of thinking, and people that really care about the community.
Yeah.
So it's even in Saudi now, it's Ministry of Culture and what's happening. I think that this is also something that could have tremendous synergy because it's all about community. But Nada, maybe we can also kind of go a little bit deeper on your creative process, because I'm definitely very curious about how can you come up with solutions for example, things that have already been created and turning them around and making them fresh and so relevant, and how you manage to also train the artisans on taking a certain direction and changing something that's been there for so many years and bringing it back to life in a way, So that's very interesting.
Well, for me, it's really about removing, not about adding, So that's where the Japanese mindset came in.
Yeah.
Because the way the Japanese look at things, even the way they look at religion or spirituality, is by clearing up their minds, emptying their minds, and purifying. And I thought how interesting it would be if we took that philosophy and applied it on our craft. Because in our part of the world, it's about repetition and more and more and more. So if you look at a lot of the craftsmen, over the years, the craft just became more elaborate. If you look 100 years ago, the inlay work was very subtle. But today, it's like, the more they put, the better. And so I came in and I said, how about if we remove? And the whole point was so that people can appreciate this craft. Because when you have so much of it, you don't appreciate how it's made. And when I saw the way it was done, the patience it took for these people to spend a lifetime just inlaying pieces of pearls or hand carving, for me, the patience was something that's so beautiful to look at, and I wanted people to notice it too. And so for me, it was about removing and taking everything away and just showing a simple line of craft. And that brought another perspective. So the people who hated the Middle Eastern craft suddenly found a way to like it again.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
the simple and minimal side of how we can be, and people get to see themselves through the craft. You know,
Yeah.
I think that there's been a long period where we've kind of been overlooked, and I think there's no better time for us now as Middle Easterners, where all eyes are on what we're doing.
Yeah.
All
True.
eyes are. There's a strong emphasis on our craft, on our heritage.
Yeah.
So it's I salute you. Uh,
Thank you.
Imad, tell us about this documentary. Can we hear a little bit more about it, or is it like top secret, or a little bit maybe just show here?
Of course, absolutely. So, talking about being agile, one of my passions was film, and I remember like growing up, always carrying a camera and making these short films. So in 2019, I said, you know what, I'm gonna take time off, and I went to film school, and I made a short film. And in that short film, we were able to capture a lot of attention and raise awareness that when you are given an opportunity to these displaced individuals, in fact, they have a lot more hunger and drive to succeed. And it was great. So I embarked on this ambitious project, and it happened here. Initially, my idea was, can we bring individuals from, let's say, our world and into the refugee camps? And for example, let's say a doctor practicing here and a doctor in that environment, a single mother, a teenage student, and to see what that common experience looked like in that environment. And I remember coming, and I met my incredible producer, Noor, here. Community, again, when we talk about community, it's all about community. You know, I shared that idea with a wonderful friend called Mariam, who has this incredible ashram here. And she told me, you have to meet my friend Noor. We meet, I tell her, and then hell breaks loose. You know, I think it took us 3 months to finally be able to get permits for people. So clearly maybe something already was brewing, and we finally managed to arrive on site. And then when the team saw the stories, they thought, look, we don't need to bring anybody from outside. Actually, there's so much already here of these incredible stories. Let's make a documentary around the success of, you know, individuals when given the opportunity.
What is it called?
So the working title, it's called From Host to Guest. And this is in reference to the Sudanese people, because they've been for a long time hosting a lot of refugees from different regions, and then they found themselves guests. So then after we came back from the trip, literally 10 days after we left Sudan, the war broke down, and we saw the whole dream collapse. So the idea of this documentary suddenly became is like, we can't talk only about the refugees who have been there for 40, 50 years, but we have to talk also about the new refugees, the new immigrants. So now the stories that we've been following, it's been 2 years, and probably if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said, I don't want to talk about it. I'm done, you know. But I am happy to say that we have, as of this week, a version that I feel very happy about, because it highlights people don't realize that, and we see it on many cases when there is a war and a displacement. Some people get stuck in refugee camps, but those who leave and try to build a new home for themselves, you know, the governments, for example, in some countries give them a home and put them in a job, but then 6 months or 8 months later, they start having panic attacks and they start having anxiety, because apparently, if you have experienced trauma, you're on this fight or flight mode, trying to secure your life. But as soon as you do, all that trauma that your body has captured through seeing death and escaping war and losing your home and belongings, all these symptoms manifest themselves. So this is as much I'd like to share about it, but it's about following people experience and seeing the different stages that people are in and how important it is, because we all gonna have either a family member, a friend, or a coworker that may experience this, is to see that they are really important tools for people to provide with, beyond giving them a house and a thing, but around how to heal the trauma that they have experienced in order for them to be really great citizens to wherever they have moved to.
And when is it coming out?
But I guess part of healing is the community is part of healing.
Absolutely.
When you have a community, you
Absolutely.
belong somewhere. There's connections, and without connection, there's no, there's
Healing.
no meaning. Yeah,
absolutely.
almost.
But
It's,
what we're doing here, like I think, especially now, I know earlier offline we were talking about kind of ChatGPT and AI, and it's all great tools. But I think the part that we cannot forget is this human connection.
Absolutely.
How we connect to one another.
And kindness. Do you remember we talked once about
Kindness,
kindness, and we
yeah.
talked about
Like,
kindness, but
Kindness.
and there's a lot of kindness in our part of the world, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of also describing the other, like elbo tayyib. Like
Yeah,
it's a,
Yes.
yeah.
it's a very
It's
Such a good word.
such a nice
Elbo tayyib.
someone is good-hearted. Yeah,
Something you said once, ما في أحلى من الطيبة.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
true. ما في
And
أحلى من
I agree
الطيبة.
completely. It's true. The things that we idealize and romanticize are very different than what other cultures are romanticizing.
Yeah.
So Sultan, I mean, mashallah, yani, so much has been achieved so far. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? With what you're doing with 1833.
It's an interesting question. It's so funny, you've mentioned earlier that I have my work at the V&A Museum, which is a legacy by itself.
Mashallah.
However, I don't think it matters to me as much as me being able to look back in 20, 30 years and say that we've sort of broke the mold here in terms of being an active part in building this industry here, the creative industry, and just playing a role of bringing people together. If ultimately I can see people working together, or I can see a young voice who wants to basically intern with Neda, I can put them in touch with Neda and they can go and intern. So just creating that ecosystem, looking back at it in 20, 30 years, if I can create that, then that's my legacy, to be quite honest with you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you're already very far, mashallah, and from what you've achieved, what you aspire to.
Inshallah, Allah يسعدك, but I think there's still a lot of work.
And still a lot of time. بعمر طويل.
Yeah.
Inshallah,
there's a
mashallah.
ripple effect, with what
It
you're
is,
doing. I think it's going to. The ripple effect is happening fast. Maybe the beginning took some time, but then
Yeah, it's interesting because like you see a lot of communities popping up right now, and people ask, what do you think of this? And I'm like, fantastic. We just need more of them. Like, I think the more we have this, the better, if we can all come together, especially at a time like this when, we have the Nadas, we have the Imads, we have incredible designers. Like, there is this incredible like rise of creatives here. And if we can all come together to create a solid industry and a space where it comes with kindness, then why not? I think one of the things that we do, like, we have no shame in saying this, like, we will revoke a membership if someone comes through as pompous or unkind, because that's definitely not the energy we want within 1833.
What did you say? If you have attitude, leave it at the door. Or what was it? There was a certain.
we want you to come without an attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Leave it at the door.
Yeah, leave it at the door. I think because in order to be able to build something, it needs to come from the heart. It needs to come from a very good space. But if you want to be part of 1833 because you want to be part of 1833, or you have a little bit of attitude, the space is not for you. And we've revoked memberships before, and we're happy to do it again. We have no problem with it. As simple as that.
Okay,
Yeah.
hats off.
Darfin, in our Idris Foundation tagline is inspiring kindness. And to what you said, Sultan, is
حلوين الطيبة.
أكيد.
Yeah.
And sometimes we've seen it happen even within our community since we started. It's other people starting their own foundations and so on. And the people say, "How do you feel about it?" I'm like, "I feel amazing. Great,
Yeah, it's incredible.
Please, if we can motivate you to do something for another human being, not just human beings. I think, we're learning that kindness cannot be just to other humans. We have to be kind across our beautiful planet if we want to keep it as a home for us.
Even our tagline is handmade and heart made.
I love
So
that.
it has
I love that.
includes.
And what about you, Nada? What kind of legacy do you want to leave?
Well, now, funnily, my son joined me 3 years ago.
What's his name?
Tamir.
Tamir. Yeah.
So he's working with me now. And when he did ask to work with me, it crossed my mind that maybe I could leave a legacy. A legacy, like when I look at Western brand, I would say like Hermes. Like Hermes talks about craft and heritage. And I think that we have a lot of craft and heritage that we can actually forward and retain and, get our grandchildren and to be proud of. So for me, it's really about just not upgrading, but keeping the craft alive in our region and just awareness about this craft and I feel that the world is turning towards craft in many
100%,
ways, in
yeah,
music and food and I think
Sustainability, quality.
yeah, and I think it's that human touch. Craft is really it's where the human being gets really involved in the making of things. And so for me, it's really about just preserving that.
Beautiful. Ahmad, I know, Allah yarham al-walid, this is a legacy that you are continuing, Idris, Allah yarhamu, and it's incredible. This is your legacy, right? That you want to leave.
Yeah, I think the legacy that I want to leave, I'd like to become a billionaire. No, not in the traditional sense. What I mean is that I always define being a billionaire is a human being who have positively impacted 1 billion people's lives in that format. And
So not the blank side, the other
not
side.
the other side, yes.
ترى ما لي حتى فلوس حلوين.
Yeah,
Say yes to that. Let's not block that energy.
يا رب. But and I told you that the incredible thing is sometimes what we seek sometimes eludes us. Like when they say about happiness, they say when you seek happiness for yourself, it eludes you. When you seek happiness for others, it comes to you. And I feel like the more I became less obsessed about, if I do this, it needs to impact that many people. Incredible things started to happen. I think, which is,
it's true.
There's this thing that I heard once. It said, if you get too tied up into this, you don't give the chance for the universe to surprise you. And,
nor allowing it to organically grow. I always think of ventures as something that you almost give it a life and it becomes a baby and you let it grow the way it should grow without tying it down.
That's right.
Absolutely. And I think that if it comes from the heart and if it's genuine and there's a concept there and there's a talent, the sky is the limit, and all it takes is one kind word to someone who's working really hard and doing great and to uplift that person. It may not be a big deal to us, but to them it is. And as you mentioned, some things may be trivial to us, but it means the world to other people. So I think it's getting into that mindset. That's why I've been so inspired by all of you. And thank you so much for being here. It means a lot that you came.
Thank you.
And I commend you on everything that you're doing. And inshallah, may all our communities kind of support each other. And we're all here for each other, and I know that. So thank you.
In this, I'd like to invite you guys all that we would make a trip to these refugee camps, through 1833, through Nedas. And I know me and you have this pending project for doing something around women. And I know you're passionate about developing women, but I'd love that we are able to go, because once you see there's some incredible human beings, and in these environments, they're even more hungry to to create.
Yes.
So,
And the concept of Gems of Arabia is about, not also creating conversations, but also collaborations. You never
Yes.
know, so that's the beauty of community and being able to all come together. And I'm definitely going to my next 1833,
Please do,
gathering
yeah.
for sure.
We have an incredible series in Ramadan, so please do.
I can't wait.
Inshallah.
Can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.